In today's video, I'd like to talk to you about the rib feature. So what the rib feature does is it allows you to put in some sort of bracing in here, and we're going to be using our Saros mechanism wheel mount in order to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of connect this plate over here, this surface over here with that surface over here, with some sort of diagonal piece in here. So this would be good for parts that are molded, like plastic injection molded parts, where it might have a certain amount of weakness down here. You can bolster that weakness and provide a little bit more strength to your part if you were to put a rib in. And so this is the way the rib works. So we're going to go ahead and sketch on my rib plane number 1, which is parallel to the right plane. And if we click on it, you can see it's out by about, 0.7 inches? So 7/10 of an inch. And we're just going to sketch a line. I mean, it's really easy to establish this. You don't necessarily have to have it fully defined, but if you do a line like that, not on that, what is that? So let's go and rebuild this, and let's actually select this as our plane we want to sketch on. So what you want to do is just sketch a line out here arbitrarily, and it's going to go ahead and put a rib in there. Very simply, we're going to go up to Features, Rib, and we're going to choose a direction here. So now it's going in the right direction down here that we wanted to do. We actually wanted to go down here. And the rules of the rib are such that the line itself that's defining this has to intersect on a surface and then on an opposing surface on the other side. And the rib itself has got to be able to intersect on those surfaces too without hindrance. So it gives us an option down here for a draft, and typically with plastic injection molding, you probably want to have a draft in here. 2 or 3 degrees is probably okay. So click on the draft button. We're going to go ahead and maybe put in, we're going to exaggerate that, put that in 5 for 5 degrees. And if we go to the green check mark, now we have our rib. So you notice we didn't have that line fully defined, and here's our rib feature down here. If we were to right click on that and maybe move that around a little bit if it isn't quite in the same location that we want it to be, we could do that too and go ahead and rebuild it. And now that rib's a little bit smaller. So kind of like with all sketching, you know, it's got a negative sign in here, which means you probably want to control that a little bit. So we can go in here and actually define that a little bit. If we were to go normal to that plane, maybe park it down here and put some constraints in there, we could do that too. And if we were to actually extend it over on the other side, what do you think it's going to do? Let's go and rebuild it and see what happens. So you can be really loose with your sketches. You're still going to put that rib in there as long as you follow the rules that the line has got to at least terminate or go beyond one surface on one end of the line, another surface on the other end of the line, and then the rib feature has got to be able to terminate on those surfaces too. So we could define this a little bit better. Again, we're going to go normal to maybe pick up that edge over here. And then we can put in dimensions in here to make sure it doesn't go off to the side and other things. But let's just try one more parameter in here and see what that looks like. Doesn't like it. It's failing. So it's breaking one of the rules. The endpoint of that line does not intersect with that surface on the solid body. So it's not going to go ahead and resolve that. But again, we can go back to that sketch, move that in a little bit, rebuild it, and then it comes back again. And you'll notice it does have that draft angle here too. So to finish this up, for a plastic injection molded part, probably want to put a fillet on the edges over here, kind of give that a little bit more of a kind of a finished look to it. Okay, so let's have a little bit more fun with this. Let's go ahead and use the rib on a different plane. Let's go ahead and roll that rollback bar back. Now let's go ahead and click on this and maybe the top plane, and let's define a whole new plane. So if we were to go over here to reference geometry, we're going to go ahead and put in a plane. So right now it's just going to be perpendicular, but let's go ahead and put an angle on that, let's say about 60 degrees. And now we have another rib plane. So now we can sketch a line on that rib plane. If we go to sketch, let's just do a linear line. We don't necessarily have to make that perpendicular. But one of the rules with that, not even on that plane. So let's go ahead and get rid of that sketch. Let's go ahead and rebuild it. Go ahead and select this plane and do that all over again. So what we want to do is we want to put a line on that plane. Not necessarily vertical, but let's kind of put it off at an angle here. Take a look at how that line's situated. So the rule is, again, the rules are that the line has to be terminated on either end, or has to either intersect or terminate the endpoint of that line on some sort of surface. And the same thing with the bottom part of that line too. If it goes off the surface like that, not going to work. If it goes through the surface, it'll work, as long as it intersects that surface. And then the rib itself, it's got to be able to go from that line down to either the surfaces where that line intersects, and it'll resolve itself. So let's try that. Let's go up to Features. Let's go to Rib. It's giving us a yellow preview, but it doesn't necessarily, we're going to get what we want, and we need to turn that. So here's our options for turning that. We can go left or right by flipping the material side. We can do the same thing by clicking on that arrow. We can flip the material side, but kind of violates the rules. It's not going to terminate any surface over here. It's not going to stop on any surface over there, so probably don't want to do that. But we can flip the material side, or we could actually go normal to the sketch. So now we're normal to the sketch, but still going off in the wrong direction. So we're going to go ahead and flip that one more time, and now it should resolve itself. And if we go to the green check mark, bang, we have it. So even though that line, if we were to take a look at that line, which is in the back, let's just go ahead and show that without all the angles associated with it and all that geometry that popped up there. Now you can see that. So now you can see that line's going off to the back, but intersects this plane down here, and it's ready to go. So let's go back and play around with that sketch just a little bit more. We can pull that line in a little bit, kind of get it in the middle of the model instead of extending beyond it. So let's go ahead and pull that down. Maybe pull this one up. Again, you could be really loose with your sketches in a rib. It'll still resolve itself. So if we go to Rebuild, now we have something that's a little bit more oblique. But, it's like typical sketches in a feature in SolidWorks, is you want to make sure that, if once you get the form that you like, it's probably good to go in there and fully define your sketch, so it doesn't move on you when you don't intend it to, when you make modifications to other sketches and features within your part. Okay, so let's take a look at some more options in here. Let's go ahead and edit this sketch, and let's do something a little crazy. Let's take that line and maybe put it right over that hole. If we put it near the hole, it's probably going to be okay. It's going to resolve itself and drop into the hole and give us a solid in there. But if we go Rebuild here, not going to like that. But we can still take the endpoint of that line because it's not fully defined. Remember, you can do that out of the sketch. And now you can see it resolve itself. So it's resolving itself there, resolve itself here. And we're doing this outside of the sketch, so we're not having to go inside of the sketch to make modifications. We could take the endpoint of that line and move that over here. If we put that right over the hole, doesn't like. Put it over here, maybe. But it's definitely going to like it over here once it gets out of that hole. So, I actually went in to edit the sketch, so let's go ahead and do that. And let's take that point and maybe put it over here. Over there a little bit more, and when it clears that hole, it's able to resolve itself. Okay, so let's do a few more things. Let's look at some different applications of the rib feature. So let's take a rollback bar and roll that back over here above plane number 1. And let's go ahead and maybe put a wall around these holes here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a wall around these holes. It's going to create kind of a boss, and if it's a thin wall, sometimes you might want to support that, and a good feature to use for that is a rib, if you can imagine. So we're going to go ahead and select on that face, go to Sketch, kind of click off here to the side, so we're going to select that face, and we're going to go to Sketch over here. We're going to go ahead and choose, again, that plane. And we're going to go ahead and choose that edge and this edge. With the Control key to press, we're going to go to Convert Entities. Now we're going to go to Features, Extruded Boss Space. We're going to go down here to Thin Feature. Probably keep that at maybe 0.1. And let's go and extend it up by maybe 0.4. And if we do that, now we can actually put a rib between this wall over here and that wall over here. So remember the rules. If we go ahead and sketch in this surface, go over here to line, we're going to make that line kind of go off to the side over here. It's going to go ahead and try to extend that line until it meets the surface, extend this line until it meets the surface, or goes beyond the surface, or intersects the surface, and then it's going to go down. Once it's able to do that and go down, then it's going to go ahead and resolve its feature. So if we go to Features, go to Rib, we want to change the direction, so we want to go ahead and go down, make sure that arrow is going down. And we're not going to put a draft angle on it. We'll keep it at a 1/10 of an inch. If we go to the green check mark, not going to do it. But we can take that line in here and maybe move that over here a little bit and try to do that again. So we'll go back to Rib, and our Features Manager, we're going to change the direction on that, go to the green check mark. Still not going to do it. So let's go ahead and take this line over here and do that one more time. So change the direction. Over here, go to the green check mark. Okay, well, it's still going off to the side. Yeah, that's a good idea to make that normal too. Okay, again, back to rib. Change the direction, go to the green check mark. Now it's going to resolve itself. So that's one application, and if we put a draft angle on that, let's go ahead and try that, rib 6. Yours might be a different name. Let's go ahead and do a draft angle on it, and let's make that an exaggerated maybe 10 degrees, and go to the green check mark and see what that does. So what that does, and we don't want to draft outwards. Yeah, we do. But it looks like it's going off the model a little bit when we put that draft in there. So let's do this. Let's take that line inside of this, and let's go ahead and bring that in a little bit. So we can do this. I don't know if you knew this, but outside of the assembly, if we were to go ahead and show that line outside of the sketch tube, we can take these sketch parameters and actually move those around a little bit. And what it does is automatically rebuilds. That's a really cool feature. You could do this in a lot of different features where you don't have defined sketches. It doesn't have to be necessarily part of the rib. And then now we can see that we don't have that draft angle on that yet. But if we go back to our rib number 6, go into that and put our draft angle in there of 10 degrees, now it'll probably resolve itself. So now we have that 10-degree draft. I think what was happening with that draft before is the draft was it was beyond the edge of this wall over here, and it didn't like that. So another option over here with our underdefined sketch, if we were to right click on that sketch and do something different to it, let's go ahead and put a little bit of an arc on it. We'll put a tangent arc on the end of this and maybe curl that around and see what that does. So if we were to rebuild that, so now it kind of does that. It takes that line, tries to terminate it at a wall that is pointing to, and looks like it's going off to that wall over here too. But we can take that line and kind of tweak it a little bit, the end of that arc, and get that actually going our model. So this is kind of a very valuable tool, being able to make modifications to endpoints of lines and arcs and see what you like. And if it's something you like, if there's a component over here you're trying to get around but still trying to support these walls, then it's a great way of doing that. You can get it around that component. Then when you get it, and when you want to fully define it, then you can put on your angles and your sketch relations and dimensions, get that fully defined. Okay, so let's look at one last option in here. If we were to go to our rib 6, yours might be a different name. We can start from the top and actually work our way to the bottom. So we kind of know what some of these are. It's kind of like a thin feature. We can favor it on one side. If we go to the green check mark, you can see how that resolves, and go back over here and do the same thing. We'd actually favor it on the other side too, rather than the middle. It'll still resolve itself. You just got to make sure that it doesn't go beyond the boundaries that we set for it. Other options over here, we have it at 1/10 of an inch. We could have it start at the sketch plane. This comes up when we actually put a draft in there. So we could actually have a draft from the sketch plane, which means this value in here of 0.1 inches is going to start here and it's going to grow to the bottom. But we could do it at the wall interface, which is going to be down here. A little bit different when you're dealing with kind of a wall over here and the line is at an angle, because then it kind of decides which wall it's going to do it at, and may give you some different results. But definitely, if you do it at the wall interface, it's going to start there and be a lot thinner on the top. But let's go ahead and see what that does. Oh, doesn't want to resolve it for us. So let's go ahead and take that line. Let's put it in the middle and see what that does. So, and let's try a draft angle of a little bit less than that. So instead of 10 degrees, let's do 5 degrees. So there we go. Yeah, so I think what it was doing was actually tapering up to nothing. If we were to make that a little bit thicker in that rib, it probably would have resolved itself a little bit better. So maybe 0.2 if we start down there at the wall instead of 0.1. Now I think if we did 10 degrees, maybe I'm pushing it over here, go to the green check mark, there it goes. So instead of tapering to nothing, it's probably coming up here, and it looks like it's resolving itself. Again, let's go back to our rib and look at one last final option over here. We can flip to the material side over here. We've already done that. Started at sketch plane. We've played with these buttons over here. But down here, we have the option of being linear or natural. Of course, everybody wants to go all natural. But the way this is going to resolve, if we think about this in regard to the linear function over here, and when it comes to the termination of that arc, it's wondering, well, what do I do? Do I go straight or do I follow the arc? If we choose linear, it's going to go right at the end of that and then go straight again. If we choose natural, it's going to curl a little bit and continue to follow that arc. So if we go to the green check mark, well, let's actually go to natural and see what that does. If we go to the green check mark, you can see it's got a little bit more curvature, but now we can take that arc and turn out a little bit and see what it does. Turn it a little bit more so it terminates at that wall. Now it's ignoring this wall. So with a linear function, it wants to go into that wall, but now it's not going to do it. The arc is allowing us to do more stuff. So now it's kind of doing something weird here. It's actually trying to pick up some geometry elsewhere, and it's resolving that a little bit differently. So now it's not going to resolve itself at all there, but if you actually curve it over like that, it looks like it's going to stop right there at the very end of that. So there's a certain extent that you can actually play around with this and get it to work right. And in this application, we're just trying to put a rib in here to get a wall between walls. So that's a rib feature, and it relies on perhaps some sketchy sketch geometry, at least at first. It uses underdefined lines at first, and arcs too, but you could define them later as you would with other features. It takes less work than it would with some other features in order to achieve the same result, but it's rule-based. Line has to extend or intersect between two different surfaces, and at 90 degrees of this line with a defined thickness, will extrude up or down to the next surface it runs into, and it needs that surface because without that surface, like we saw with the hole, you're not going to get any rib. So within these rules, a rib feature is the quick and easy down and out feature.